My name is Claire, and I never imagined that one day I would sit down to share the most vulnerable chapter of my life. I am a 45-year-old woman, married to my husband Daniel for more than 2 decades. We built a home together in the suburbs of Ohio, raised 2 wonderful children, and shared countless memories. From the outside, everything about our life looked perfect. Friends and neighbors would often comment on how solid our marriage appeared and how lucky we seemed to be. But behind the walls of our home, things weren't always as bright as they appeared. Marriage, as anyone who has been in one for long enough knows, is not always about romance and laughter. There are times when it feels like the two of you are simply coexisting under one roof. Daniel and I loved each other, but somewhere along the way, the spark that once defined us began to fade. Between his demanding job and my responsibilities at home, we slowly drifted apart. We spoke less about our dreams and more about bills, repairs, and schedules. The warmth of our relationship had cooled into something that felt more like a routine than a love story. It was during this fragile season of my life that Ethan, Daniel's nephew, entered our story in an unexpected way. Ethan was 24, the son of Daniel's older brother. He had always been polite and respectful whenever we saw him at family gatherings, but we weren't particularly close. He was young, full of ambition, and just beginning to find his place in the world. When Ethan's company transferred him to our city, Daniel suggested he stay with us temporarily until he found his own apartment. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Having someone new in the house, when I was already struggling with my own emotions, felt overwhelming. But Ethan moved in, bringing with him a quiet kindness that I hadn't realized how much I needed. He would often offer to help me with chores without being asked, something Daniel rarely did anymore. If I was carrying heavy groceries, Ethan would rush to take them from me. When the car needed washing, he grabbed the hose and did it. If I looked tired, he would say, "Aunt Claire, sit down, I'll handle it." His presence wasn't intrusive, it was thoughtful. One rainy afternoon, I came home feeling exhausted after a long day of errands. I walked into the kitchen to find Ethan already there, preparing dinner. He had looked up a recipe online and was stirring a pot of pasta sauce, humming to himself. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. That simple act of care touched me deeply. I realized how starved I had been for small gestures of kindness, for someone to notice when I was weary. Ethan didn't know it, but his attentiveness began to heal something inside me. Our conversations were light at first, about movies, his work, and his hopes for the future. But slowly, they grew deeper. He would ask me questions that Daniel no longer thought to ask. What did you dream of becoming when you were younger? Do you ever feel like you're missing out on something? His curiosity about my life reminded me that I was more than just a wife and mother. I was still a woman with thoughts, feelings, and dreams. One evening, while we were folding laundry together, Ethan shared how difficult it had been growing up without much emotional support from his parents. "Sometimes I just wanted someone to listen to me," he said quietly. I felt a pang in my chest. His words mirrored my own hidden longing. Without realizing it, our bond became stronger, not through anything romantic, but through a shared need for understanding. But human emotions are complicated. What begins as gratitude can sometimes blur into something more if you are not careful. Ethan's kindness filled a void in my heart, and in moments of weakness, I found myself leaning on him more than I should have. I felt guilty, knowing that my heart should belong only to my husband. Yet the comfort of Ethan's presence was hard to resist. The defining moment came one evening when Daniel had to work late again. I sat in the living room, flipping through old photo albums, feeling nostalgic and sad. Ethan walked in and sat beside me. He looked at the pictures of Daniel and me in our younger years, smiling at how happy we looked. "You two were such a beautiful couple," he said softly. My eyes welled up with tears. I admitted to him that sometimes I felt invisible in my own marriage. Ethan listened quietly, his eyes filled with empathy. Then he said something that shook me. "You deserve to feel loved every day, Aunt Claire." That sentence echoed in my mind for days. I knew Ethan meant it in a kind, supportive way, but the truth was, I had been craving those words. I had been craving that validation. I realized then that I was standing at a dangerous crossroads. I could either allow this emotional closeness with Ethan to grow into something that could damage everyone, or I could face the emptiness in my marriage head-on. One night, unable to sleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my journal. I wrote down everything I had been feeling: the loneliness, the gratitude for Ethan's kindness, and the guilt that weighed heavily on me. As the tears fell onto the paper, I made a decision. I could not allow myself to cross a line that would betray my husband and family. Ethan's kindness was a gift, but it was not meant to replace the commitment I had made to Daniel. The next morning, I spoke to Ethan. I thanked him for all the help and support he had given me, but explained that I needed to set boundaries. I told him that while I appreciated his kindness, I had to be careful not to rely on him in ways that blurred the roles of family. Ethan listened quietly, then nodded. "I understand, Aunt Claire," he said. "I never wanted to cause any trouble. I just wanted to help." His maturity in that moment brought me relief. But my journey was far from over. I still needed to address the cracks in my marriage. One weekend, I asked Daniel if we could talk. It wasn't easy to admit how lonely I had felt, or how much I missed the closeness we once had. Daniel listened in silence, and for the first time in years, I saw tears in his eyes. "I didn't realize I had let things get this bad," he admitted. "I thought providing for us was enough, but I see now that I've neglected us." That conversation became the beginning of a new chapter in our marriage. Daniel and I started going to counseling, where we learned to communicate again. It wasn't an instant fix, but slowly, we rebuilt the bond that had weakened over the years. I also learned to take responsibility for my own happiness, instead of placing the weight of it entirely on my husband or on anyone else. As for Ethan, he eventually found his own apartment and moved out. Before he left, he gave me a hug and said, "Thank you for being there for me too." His words reminded me that our connection, though complicated, had been rooted in mutual care. We had both helped each other in ways we didn't expect. Looking back, I see that season of my life as both a warning and a blessing. It showed me how easily loneliness can lead us down dangerous paths if we are not mindful. But it also reminded me of the power of kindness, of how a simple gesture can mean the world to someone who feels unseen. Ethan's kindness helped me confront the emptiness I had been avoiding, and ultimately, it pushed me back towards saving my marriage rather than abandoning it.